Hi, I'm Michel Bayan, and welcome to the Source DS.
Hey everybody, my guest today is the president and CEO of Fight Against Domestic Violence, Jared Richards. What an amazing guy, very authentic and really true, not only in terms of how to run a much more progressive direct selling company, really do it with some really cool ethical standards and talking about how he did that, but also how we bring cause directly into our company by creating foundations that support those causes and then activate our field with those causes. So with them, it's fighting against domestic violence. And he's got a really compelling and very touching story of all of the lives of the people in their field that have been affected by domestic violence and how this came to be the mission or one of the missions of that company. And in addition to that, he talks about that transition of, building a startup company all the way up past the 100 million mark and realizing that it's like we've talked with some other guests, that there's a time for transition and that new leadership and new skills are required to take you from, point B to point C. And really having the humility and the wisdom to look at knowing that you might need to step aside as that leader and bring someone in with that new skill set that's required. So an amazing, amazing interview. I think you'll really enjoy Jared Richards, and we'll see you on the other side. Thanks for listening. Okay, Jared Richards, welcome to the Source DS. Nice to have you on today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Michelle.
So you've recently just transitioned from being the president of Jamberry over to the nonprofit side and becoming the president and CEO of Fight Against Domestic Violence. Tell me a little bit about this transition and how this inspired you to move all the way into the cause side of the business.
Yeah, no, great question. Jamberry was such a wonderful, wonderful journey for me. I was there really since some of the earliest days, got to fight and go through all of the pains that so many direct selling companies who start to have hyper growth experience, handling logistics and making sure you get all your web services are running and your customer support can grow. And, oh no, we're growing out of this building. And so got to experience and be a part of all of that and be so close to so many of the reps that really made Jamberry what it has become. And it's been such a fun journey. And then we got into kind of more of the big company Jamberry, right? And, as an entrepreneur, I've always operated as an entrepreneur, and it's go fast, go quick. Who cares if you make some mistakes? Quicker is better than slower with not reaching the goals that you want to in time.
Mm-hmm.
So, for me, one of my mantras was always done is better than perfect. And in a startup, that's totally fine. That's totally great. But as we started to mature as an organization, things became more systematized. There were more people touching more things. And that was great. It was a great learning experience for me to how to mature into, a ripe management level individual who was trying to understand how all these pieces worked with all the different departments.
At the same time, trying to manage a field that's growing and, growing extremely quickly and all these new demands, right?
Yeah, totally. And it pushed me to a new skill set. It was one of more meetings and more coordination and more future planning and all these things. And, one of the things I've come to appreciate is that we've got our strong suits and we've got the things that we are still developing. And my strong suits have always been speed and people and innovation. And I found myself, I recognized that I was not as strong in traditional large company management role. I was always looking like, oh, what's the new things we can do? What are the new products we can innovate? What's the new channels that we can go acquire? And we really needed somebody in that larger company management role who understood what it means to have systems in place and how to operate kind of in that when you've got so many people to manage appropriately. So, we were this organization of 99.8% women from the field and largely at the home office too. And we just thought we really, really needed a strong, amazing female CEO. And after a good long search, we found one industry expert, had been in the industry for years, well, not years, decades, over 2 decades she'd been in the field, just resonated with our brand. And so when we brought her in, it was just the perfect fit. Elizabeth Thibodeau, she sits in that CEO role and she's just amazing. And it allowed me to kind of move over into this new kind of cause-based role to work with Jamberry side by side to go. And yeah, it's basically a startup focused on, a cause, which is fight against domestic violence.
That's great. And I'll tip my hat to you because, a lot of people, founders or early people in companies, they have a lot of trouble being able to recognize that in themselves and being able to put that kind of humility hat on and know that it's just a different skill set, right?
It is.
From 0 to 100 is one thing, and from 100 to 200 is a whole other thing, and from 200 to a billion is a whole other thing,
Yeah.
And it requires a different kind of skill set. It takes a lot of different types of people to make a business. And so that's amazing that you saw that and you found someone so special that you guys really believe in. So tell us about we'll get back to the business and that journey, but let's go in and dig in with Fight Against Domestic Violence. Tell us a little bit about the organization and its mission.
Yeah, well, the organization kind of started back when I was even beginning with Jamberry. I remember I was in St. Louis, Missouri. We had a regional event, a regional sales event, and all our reps came in, all our consultants came in. And, being new to direct sales, this was kind of a foreign experience for me. All these people in a room, all united behind this product, 99.9% women again. And the energy was just incredible. The sales training was awesome. And then the event ended and, pretty routine. Everybody wants to meet the people from home office there. So I'm shaking hands and hearing people's stories. And then I totally get blindsided. And I anticipate I'm going to hear a story about how, a woman, how she's able to pay for baseball, traveling baseball for her son because of the income she was making through Jamberry. The story I heard was totally different. And she said, "Oh man, I just want to tell you, I'm just so grateful that I encountered Jamberry. I didn't realize that I was going to meet such a wonderfully supportive group of women. And that's just been phenomenal. And I'm really good at this. And I haven't felt this confidence in myself for years." And I'm like, wow, I'm so glad that this could be a great opportunity for you. And she's like, and the cash that I'm able to have on a weekly basis, because of those three things, the community, the confidence I have, and the cash, I was able to escape an unsafe relationship that I'd been in for years.
Wow.
And that's when I had to take a step back. I didn't know how to respond. I was just kind of like baffled. It's like, oh my gosh, wow. I knew that the flexible entrepreneurship opportunities would be impactful, but I didn't anticipate in that way. And at the time I was naive because I thought that this woman was like one in a million. Like, oh yeah, I'm glad that she was able to escape that situation. But, in this room that was here today, she was probably the only one. And then again and again and again and again, we heard the story over and over, slightly different, but it always came back to the community, the confidence, and the cash. And, we went over to an event in the UK, same thing, over one in New Zealand. The New Zealand event only had 70 people there. And I still, not soliciting, not asking people, I still had one person come forward in New Zealand and say, "Hey, I got to tell you my story." And so that's when I knew, when I had time to focus on building the cause into the company, I knew what I was going to focus on. I knew what we would want to focus on. So that's kind of the roots.
It blows my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing. And just from an industry perspective in general, the good that direct selling does around the world, and how unsung it is amazing to me. And that's great. I mean, that goes right up to the top level of stories I've heard, and I've heard them from companies all over the world. So this started to sort of come up as a theme for you? Something you were hearing again and again?
It was a theme we heard. And then in August 2015, I remember it was a Sunday afternoon. My family and I, we were out at this little pizzeria, and it was cool. And then my wife got this phone call, and she excused herself. And she doesn't usually do that. We're the family. She'd stick around. So she excuses herself. And after a few minutes, I'm starting to get worried about her. So I go out, and she's outside, just in tears on a curb, sitting there. And I've never seen her like this. And I find out that our good friend had just been shot in the back of the head by her husband, her estranged husband.
Oh.
And this is a woman, she was the principal breadwinner. She's a university professor with a PhD. I mean, it's not when you think of domestic violence, you're like, oh, it affects this one type of segment. But no, this she was the strong principal breadwinner, highly educated. And, this happened to her. And her husband had never physically assaulted her previously, but she had expressed her desire, or expressed that she was going to be leaving, which is always the most dangerous time for anybody leaving an unsafe relationship, because the desperation and like the irrationality comes out in the abuser.
Yeah.
And that happened after a 3-hour police standoff. They're being held there hostage. And luckily she lived. She lost an eyeball, but luckily she lived. So that was another encounter that it just like struck such a chord that we said, there's just too many things pointing at us to say we need to use our resources, our network to address this. And so lining up the right CEO freed that up, and it's time to run. And so we've been running since we launched on February 14th.
That's amazing. What an amazing story. And how does that integrate in with the field? How do you guys get the field involved in the cause and kind of weave it into the way that business is done?
Yeah, well, I mean, luckily Jamberry as an organization and our new CEO wanted to get behind this. And so, you've got to have everybody's got to buy in. And Jamberry's always been a very charitable organization. Even this last year, we saw our reps, no prompting from home office, nothing like that. They started this thing they called blessing bags, and they started putting together these things for veterans or for people in need. And they always were trying to fill needs as they saw them. And so when we put an organized cause in front of them, the response was immediately like, yes, how can I help? And what can we do? And so what we wanted to do as an organization is we understood that there are other organizations out there who do things better, who do things that are very specific and unique, who do things that are specialized that they've been spending decades on in the kind of the domestic violence realm. And so our vision was not to recreate the wheel. We wanted to be lean, and we wanted to be able to use any resources that came in to go and benefit those existing communities, those existing direct service providers, think shelters, think family justice centers. We wanted it to benefit them. And so we created a program to create awareness, outreach, education, and financial resources for domestic violence victims and their communities in connection, and use the Jamberry field as a microphone, as a social media audience to reach a new demographic that probably wasn't being reached through existing organizations. So that means that we're partnering with other organizations with their trainings. We're partnering with other organizations on their campaigns. We're partnering with other organizations on their lobbying efforts. We're partnering with shelters to provide trickle-down resources to them in financial grants, in product grants. So Jamberry is providing all sorts of product. This next week, we've got almost 300 shelters who've opted in, and they're all going to be receiving this big Jamberry care package that people can use these awesome beauty products with their residents there at the shelters. They've just gone through these traumatic experiences. They're in transition. And what a better way to normalize and to have a positive experience, to regain some of that confidence, to forget about the trauma for a moment with some of this beautification.
Definitely. And if someone else is doing that for you, and if someone's putting it on for you, that just that touch, that connection to another person, it's intimate, it feels safe, you feel cared for.
Totally. We've actually had to slow down some of those Jamberry sales reps because we had so many people who said, I want to get to that shelter. And we said, hold on, slow down. We've got a process. So let us build this out a little more. We've only been launched for 2 weeks. Let us build this process better so we can be high impact on the purpose with the shelters, but low burden. Because it's been really interesting learning along this process. You think about shelters and you're like, oh, they would want tons of volunteers. But being understaffed and under-resourced, under-financed, underfunded, when they hear volunteers, they hear extra time, extra work, no additional resources.
Yeah,
so we're trying to build these programs that they can basically just work, and all the shelter has to do is say, hey, residents, we're going to have these people here at this date and time, reserve the space, and then our people will do all the training before they get there, and will be great stewards to come in, have those personal connections, like you said. And then the hearts of the Jamberry reps are just that much more connected to the cause, and it's just a win-win for survivors, for allies, for everybody.
That's amazing that you're thinking it through to that level. And you're also doing something else, which I haven't really seen much in the sort of the foundation side or the nonprofit side of direct selling, is partnering with outside brands. I saw something about a partnership with Verizon on the website.
Yeah, absolutely. So this kind of goes to our mission of we're louder together. And I know in the corporate world, sometimes it can be tricky because co-branding, that means that your brand is getting diluted and you're thinking about your own profitability, and you have to think about those things, especially if you've got shareholders and others that are looking at that. Profit is goal, it's purpose. But in the cause-related sector, we tried to flip it on its head. And we said, what if we think about this differently than like, what can we do as a single organization, all with our own assets and our own materials? And we said, how can we take the network that we have, the messaging that we have, and get it out to as many people as possible? And strategically partnering was a great way to do that. So, for example, there's a domestic violence organization called No More. And No More set out, they said, there's shelters all over the US, all over the globe, and they're understaffed and under-resourced. They probably can't do social media effectively. They probably can't do educational or big marketing campaigns super effectively. What if we created materials for them? This looks a lot like direct selling, by the way. What if we created materials for them in a centralized place and then allowed them to access all of these materials under a Creative Commons license with a common branding that they can use? And then, XYZ shelter in, Podunk town in Texas can look bigger than they are. And we loved that. Because of that, they had coordinated with the NFL. They did PSAs during not this year's Super Bowl, but previous year's Super Bowl. We've just been really impressed with them. And we said, they're going to be doing a campaign in March. Let's piggyback on top of that campaign. So we reached out to them. We said, what assets can we provide to you? And they said, you know what? We've been wanting to do a nail wrap that Jamberry can produce for a long time. So we said, awesome, let us do that. So we produced a No More nail wrap. The sales proceeds of that become a donation directly to Fight Against Domestic Violence, our charity. They go directly into our financial grant program so we can make grants to local shelters. So we're trickling it down to the local level. And by piggybacking with them, we were able to get some press on, the fashion blog Refinery 29. Our good friend Jenny, who I mentioned, she got shot in the back of the head. Her story was featured on people.com, People magazine. It got picked up 2 days later by a London-based newspaper, the UK Sun. So all of these wonderful resources came by partnering with No More in their campaign. And No More is partnering with Verizon, who's also supporting domestic violence victims with their Hope line. When you donate phones, they refurbish phones and get them to domestic violence organizations to use. And then they're matching it with dollars too. So by combining together, more resources come to bear to benefit this cause. So it's less about thinking about us and our brand and more about thinking about the cause as a whole.
That's amazing. And this is not just something that is, doing the obvious and much needed good that we're talking about here, but it's also something that really can have a positive impact on your field in general, right? By getting them behind a cause that they can believe in. I mean, this is new for you, but I imagine you guys are already thinking about what kind of increased engagement you can get from them by having a cause that is tied into the business so closely.
Totally. I mean, cause is good for humanity, but it's also good for business. If you think about it purely in the good for humanity standpoint, that's great because that's how you win, because it's pure, it's passionate, and then inevitably, it's just a natural consequence. You have higher engagement. So, for example, Jamberry does a kind of a catalog switchover twice a year in March and September. So we launched this No More, say No More to Domestic Violence campaign at the beginning of March. So with that came a whole new catalog, all these fun, new, exciting products. And right now, our No More, this charity wrap, this charity nail wrap, No More wrap, is the third highest selling wrap out of the hundreds of new wraps that came out in this catalog. So we see the field is totally engaging with it. The other thing, by teaming up with No More, we gave them an outlet for local organizations, domestic violence organizations, or domestic violence allies to have a fundraising outlet. So No More went out to their 70,000 people and said, hey, you want to do a fun fundraiser? Go to the Jamberry Host a Party page, and they'll come and they'll do a fun party for you that will fundraise resources for your choice of domestic violence organization locally. So again, it provided more engagement with our sales field as well by tapping into a new resource to bring leads for fundraising, Jamberry fundraising parties for them. Amazing. So, it really can be a win-win.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's so good. And let's use this as an opportunity actually to go into Jamberry a little bit more, and let's talk about your experience there, because you've got such a great story to share around, your background as a startup attorney, And this started off as like a ski business, right? And then the Jamberry was a way to make money. The nails was a way to make money in the summer, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then it was originally an e-commerce business, and then you saw this thing called direct selling. How did that click for you?
It was such a crazy journey deciding that we wanted to be entrepreneurs because we saw the change that could come in being an entrepreneur, the power, the empowerment that comes from running and owning your own business. That was such a powerful theme for us. Unfortunately, we decided to get into an inventory, cash-heavy, cash-intensive, seasonal business with a very small market. And that meant that we needed to find resources in the summertime. And we tried one thing. We started building stand-up paddle boards. That wasn't a great realm. And so the next year, Adam Hepworth, one of the founders of Jamberry, he came and he said, you know what? I found with our sticker printing equipment at the ski company, I think I found a new product that we could launch. And it's these like nail wraps, like how you wrap a car with vinyl. I was like, yeah. He's like, I think we could do that with fingernails. And then you could like do all sorts of crazy nail art. And we're like, cool. That sounds awesome. So he's like, I'm going to go mess around with that. We said, awesome. So he took a little break from the ski company, started innovating this product while we were helping pay, keep the family fed. And all of a sudden, this nail company started looking at trying to be innovative online. And it was at the time that Groupon was really popular, and there were like 1,000 Groupon competitors. You may remember that. But it was an awesome customer acquisition channel for us. Because we had good margin in the product, we were able to list our retail price at $20. The Groupon price was $10. They would keep $5. We would keep $5. And we had good margin. So it was like, sweet, let's do this all day. So we started getting a customer base through e-commerce that way, finding a really cheap, free kind of customer acquisition channel. But then doing those over and over and over, they started to, the effectiveness started to dilute down a little. It started to be a little loud, that channel. And, we'd been working with entrepreneurs as a startup attorney. I worked with a lot of incubators in Salt Lake City. I saw the power of entrepreneurship, and we started hearing our customers at Jamberry saying, hey, how can we sell this? We'd heard of direct selling. We're in Utah, one of the meccas, one of the hubs of direct selling. But we'd never really we didn't know a whole lot about the business. And all we'd heard is some of the ick, some of the ick stories about like predatory behaviors in direct selling. And so we were kind of tainted with that perspective of the industry. And it came after we started digging in and saying, oh my gosh, we've been wanting to figure out a way to give low risk, flexible entrepreneurship to people with not a whole lot of startup capital. And we were just blown away at the opportunities that existed in direct selling. And then when we figured out that we could put our own kind of like ethical parameters around direct selling and like non-predatory, we're like, wait, we could create a model where people don't have to hold inventory. They can sell their product online and they can get paid without ever having to buy product. Sweet. Talk about low risk, flexible entrepreneurship.
Rock and roll. That's a great way to do it.
We loved it. We loved it. And so we felt like we could get into the industry in our own way and feel like, positive that this could be a positive impact without being a predatory kind of a realm. And so we ran with that. And that's where Jamberry really started to innovate in, 2011, 2012. And we kind of finally got into the direct sales industry.
That's amazing. Talk to me a little bit more about this ethical profile that you guys have, and what are some of the principles that are like the guiding principles of that idea?
For me and for Adam, it was okay. If you're going to be seeking a kind of a flexible entrepreneurship opportunity, the demographic that's going to be looking to that is either entrepreneur by choice or entrepreneur by necessity.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're entrepreneur by choice, great. I have less ethical concerns because you're looking for a way to become an entrepreneur. And if you're not going to do it through direct selling, you're going to do it another way. And, if you go open up a pizza parlor, the startup capital to go and do that and the risks of not having a successful business are so much greater than anything that exists in direct selling to begin with. So for that group and that segment, less concerned, less kind of patriarchal or protective from my perspective.
Yep.
But for the entrepreneur by necessity, they are either, they've made life decisions that were choices that they wanted to make, but it left them when they needed to find a way to make money in a position that if they needed more education, they're 3-4 years out. That's not going to work. If they didn't have the job experience that they need right now, Again, that's time that they don't have now. They need something to work for them now. So when you look at that, there aren't a whole lot of opportunities outside of direct selling that exist for that on-demand entrepreneur that needs it now. And that's the group who, if I need income now, I can't stand to find a whole lot of startup capital, and I can't wait 10 months for it to start paying me, and I can't hold a lot of inventory because cash flow is king. So those are kind of the things we were looking at to say, okay, low startup capital, little to no inventory requirements if possible, and the ability to make cash quick based upon selling online. Because we figured if you could do that, and if any inventory you did hold, you could return kind of no questions asked for full refund or almost a full refund, then there's not a whole lot that you can lose. You still have some people saying, well, they're promoting to my network. Hello, what do we do every single day
that's
without
life.
getting
That's
paid for it? It's
alive.
Life.
Yeah.
It's life. So there's some of those things that like the naysayers will get into that are just like, come on, people. We're actually providing a better opportunity for people to do what they already were doing. So for us, it was really about, we don't want to take the widow's mite. We don't want to take the last dollar. We want to be able to have you invest almost nothing and to be able to make your money back at your very first party, one party, two parties, however it is. And so we built that into our plan. That's
awesome.
what we chose to be.
You said something about online. Are you encouraging your sales reps to have an online business? I mean, I did notice when I was doing some Googling, I did get some ads that came up that looked like it was from a rep, and I was getting like a rep's website. But then I think you guys also do some customer acquisition on your own, and then kind of bring that and feed that into the network.
I think you've got to look at your audience and understand that you're going to have some people who they're going to naturally flow to where they're most comfortable. And we've got some women who they've been doing in-home, in-person selling for so long that great. If that's your bread and butter, awesome. You can have a catalog. You don't have to order anything, and you can just, have your iPad there and take the order for the customer and have it shipped directly to them. You don't have to worry about a lot of all those logistics of receiving it, breaking down orders, holding inventory. What do I have? What do I not? Contacting other people to sell stuff. It's just like, we'll keep stuff in stock. We'll ship it for you. So all you have to do is sell and market. So for those people who are really good at in-person, we wanted that opportunity to be there for them. But we found when we started building kind of an online social selling type model, we found a whole new group of women who otherwise would not have engaged in selling because they didn't feel comfortable in an in-person, in face-to-face kind of interaction. But if they could hide behind their computer and use the power of social media to market their business and to use social media for their calls to action to purchase or buy, and to use the social influence of the others that are participating in buying and selling through their business, we found all sorts of new women who their businesses was operated between 10 at midnight to 1 in the morning, totally online, after their kids were in bed, around the time that they wanted, hiding behind their screen, doing what they knew how to do and doing it well. And it's amazing. It's amazing how many women are operating businesses completely from their phone, from their handheld, while they're waiting at kids' gymnastics classes or wherever else.
Amazing. I mean, and this is something that I want to just like really put a very big button on, because there's a lot of direct selling companies that I talk to out there that are still in a mentality of, especially with the regulatory stuff that's going on, they're in this kind of this idea of being in this fight. And the fight is to kind of be able to keep doing it the way they've always been doing it. And I think this is an example of A, the way we used to do it isn't going to work anymore en masse, because B, there's so many different types of ways to do it these days, and you're going to encounter people that want to do it in different ways. If our messaging as a company, which many direct selling companies still do, is, hey, this is the way to do it. You do it our way. It's our system. You go A and B, and this is the way you do it. And that's the only way that works. And if you're going to do it a different way, we're not really going to pay much attention or care about you. That doesn't work anymore. And what I'm hearing you say is that you encounter people that want to do the business in different ways, and you guys make an effort to support them in doing it that way. And therefore have a wider group of people that want to do and can succeed at a Jamberry business.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one word of caution, it's like any business, you can let things go out of control. So that, simplifying in systems that direct selling preaches, totally believe in that. But if you can attract different demographics who want to do it different ways, but still keep that simplicity in those systems, that's where I think you're a win-win for sure.
Yeah, and have something for them, have something for everyone. The basics of how you can do it in different ways. Because like you said, it takes all different types of personalities. Some are very cause-driven, right? Which is how we probably activate a lot of people, is by giving them a cause to get behind. Some people, like you said, want to get behind a screen and they don't want to interact with people on a belly-to-belly as much until that person's already kind of closed as a customer or very close to being closed. And they feel comfortable because they don't want to feel salesy. And then you got the people who are doing it in a more traditional way that want to have a party and want to have everybody over and want to connect and be that social center of their community. And they get a lot of value out of just being the host. Forget about the money.
Absolutely.
And we've got to be able to meet them all where they're at. And I love that, driving that cause into it is amazing. And engaging your field in that way is amazing. Talk to us a little bit about the results. So you guys, we talked about how it got started and this transition. What were some of the major milestones for the company over those few years up until now?
Yeah, I mean, we had very low expectations out of the gate. When we hit like $1 million a year as a small startup, we were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. We'd been running a ski company that had been working for 5 years and we still hadn't hit our $1 million mark, And so we were like, man, this is amazing. The power of direct selling. And then the next year, we were at $16 million and it was like, oh my gosh, how can this channel grow so quickly? And then you go almost, we're under 100 million that third year and we're like, but we're getting close and we're like, oh my gosh. For us, the big milestone we wanted to hit was the number we always looked at was commissions paid out, because we're like, commissions paid out is where we're putting food on the table in communities across the globe, wherever Jamberry consultants are. And I remember when we hit over $100 million paid in commissions in 1 year. And Adam and I, the other founder, we've got this little thing and we just give each other a handshake, but it was like, oh my gosh, that one was handshake deserving. It was like, we hit that $100 million in commissions paid in a single year. And it was like, oh my gosh, like we started breaking it down and it was like, that's a lot of people impacted.
Yeah.
Not to mention the home office staff and the number, the over 400 people we had working at, at home office and thinking about all their families that we see on a daily basis. It was very fulfilling to know that much money was in people's pockets.
That's amazing. And it's not just the number of people and it's not just how much money, but it's also that kind of demographic. Like in our economy right now, one of the challenges we have is like putting money, down at the lower parts of the socioeconomic ladder. More and more businesses want to suck money up to the top. And there aren't a lot of businesses out there that can keep a lot of money down, down at the bottom without kind of sucking it all at the top. And that's another great advantage of direct selling, is not just that you're making money, but you're spreading it out to a lot of people who wouldn't be getting it if the company was structured in a different way.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love the most, is it gets it to the people who need it.
And that leads us to something that we were kind of nerding out before we started recording, which was talking about the future of direct selling and looking at it as it relates to, this massive wave of automation and robotics and AI that are coming at us that are already and going to be really accelerating in the next few years, ejecting people out of the job market. And a lot of these people, a lot of them will be able to train up and do something better, but many, many millions of them will not. And how do you look at that problem of technological unemployment and how we as a channel, direct selling, can maybe play a role in that future of helping to absorb these people that are being ejected from the job market and offering them some form of income?
I've got so many thoughts there. And, disclaimer, I don't know if Jamberry would necessarily endorse all my thoughts in this realm or even fight against domestic violence. So these are just kind of off the cuff.
Great.
Jared speaking as Jared. But, I think you're totally right. As jobs get replaced by automation and AI, the human element and the human touch will be so critical. But the one thing that we're going to have to do if we want to stay relevant as humans is we're going to have to add value. And so sometimes, and this may reflect probably what you've seen us trying to do in fight against domestic violence, is sometimes it may feel like you want to be protective of your business, but the real value comes when you can look beyond yourself, look beyond your bottom line and really add value. And the loyalty that comes there and the rewards that actually come there are second to none. I see that in direct selling. I see some of the most successful direct sellers I've seen. If you ask them how much they sold this month, they may not even know. All they know is that they helped this many people, and they know their names, and they know what they ordered, and they know why they ordered, and they know how to make recommendations to them, because they are not just providing a product. They're not just letting people know. They're not just a point of sale where somebody can check out. They are actually adding value. And whether that's in direct selling or wherever it is across any channel, if you can always just keep that in mind, how can I add value to my customers, even if it means that I'm going to get a return immediately or not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's keeping that human element ever present.
And there's so much advantage to that. I mean, if you look at us as a channel vis-a-vis Amazon, right? Amazon is like the ultimate centralization, and we are sort of the ultimate decentralization. And a lot of talk has been, I've been talking to a lot of executives who are kind of blaming Amazon for the decline of some of the kind of direct selling legends, And I think that there may be some truth to that. And it's difficult for us to try to compete with this idea of, same day delivery. But if we take a step back for a second and we realize, I was talking to a big company executive last week, and she was telling me that, how many distributors they had. And I said, if you think about it, I would say like 80% of every American lives within, a 10-minute drive of one of your reps.
Your distribution hubs. It's amazing. Yeah. Probably better than Amazon.
Yeah. And so someone's buying, like a blush or something. What do you want? You want a drone to drop it off at their front door? What's better, right? A drone dropping it off at their front door, or one of their neighbors from their neighborhood coming by, showing them how to put it on and upselling them the lipstick?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple other thoughts I have. Let me see if I can organize these. Yeah. In building that non-predatory culture, one of the elements that we wanted to have injected into the culture, and I'm glad we established, was that you don't make money off of if I'm a consultant, I don't make money off of other consultants. So if I build a system and that system can benefit me and my team, it can also benefit other people who may not even be in my downline. I may never, ever get a check off of them. But in Jamberry, a culture was created where everybody shared those elements. So when you're talking about AI, one of the powerful things that we have is the community that we've built to crowdsource. I mean, it is kind of a form of AI, but it's a human form of AI. The product that we get out of crowdsourcing campaigns, of crowdsourcing new product ideas, of crowdsourcing, you name it, has been so powerful, coming from a culture where sharing was the norm. It wasn't protectionist. It wasn't, I'm going to build this thing and now I'm going to package it up and sell it to my whole downline. Does that make sense? And I think that's a huge power, like you said, of having 200,000 distributors that can all mind meld and distribute these ideas in an insanely fast way. So that's one. The one other thought, and this is kind of more doomsday type scenario of, I think we go centralization, but, if we ever run into resource constraints where shipping things is so inefficient from one place to halfway across the globe to another place, the inefficiencies and the oil consumption and all of these things, eventually, I think even when AI rules, local communities are going to be the source of so much problem solving and so much of where our lives will take place. Like right now, we're very global. I think that in the future, there will be kind of a pendulum will swing back. And this is Jared hypothesizing and not Jamberry or Fight Against Domestic Violence. But I think we'll come back to a real local community group. And direct selling really provides infrastructure and systems to be able to do that more effectively than so many businesses that exist out there.
Definitely. And we're already seeing that, right? I mean, what is the gig economy? I've had an Airbnb business that's very successful for about a year and a half. And that is really that, right? Everyone thinks of the hotel industry as like something that's always been there, but it's really only a 50-year-old industry. And if we go back like 150 or 200 years, everybody was an entrepreneur, And so
absolutely,
the term didn't exist, but like you were either that or like an indentured servant, And so, there's so much going on. Thank you for sharing your personal ideas. I think that's really important. And I want to go a little bit more as we start to wrap up and learn a little bit more about you and how you look at stuff. And I see a lot of direct selling executives they work very hard. They work a lot of hours. They burn the candle on both ends. And they're always looking, for ways to sort of strike that work-life balance. Have you found any tools for yourself that you can share about how you think about managing your time or your efforts or some way to kind of achieve balance for yourself?
Oh, so first off, full disclosure, I don't believe balance will ever exist in the lives of anyone.
Yeah.
So I think we can
There's
always
no there, right?
There's no there. Asymptotically, you may approach it, but it's like infinity. You may approach it, but you're never going to quite get there. So it's always like what do I do to best make sure that I'm always kind of approaching it? Because if you do have perfect balance, my interpretation of that is that you're not giving enough of your time and your talents to other areas where you can be impactful. Whether that's impactful in your family life or your community life or your business life or your recreational life, there's something more that you can give if you think that you're in perfect balance right now. To achieve that kind of balance, I've done a couple of things. One is each year I kind of build out, it's kind of a circular model. And I have different aspects of my life that I think are important. So I'll have like philanthropy, work, education, mentorship. I think I already said family, recreational, and then kind of like church. And I kind of have those all out there. And in family is kids. That's kind of a subcategory, making sure we're doing that. And then I say, okay, well, what do I want to accomplish this year in each of these elements? And making sure that I'm scheduling, because, working in the ski industry for the first few years, I thought like that was one of my passions. I love skiing, but I found that I was skiing less than I had when I wasn't working in the ski industry. And so I was like, wait, something's wrong here. And so first was just, for the year, just get some of those things on your calendar that you need to do. And then you're going to plan around them. Otherwise, all the little stuff is going to fill in. It's going to take over. You're not going to be able to build in some of those things. The second was just identifying some of those key areas. If you let work do it, it will take over everything. So understanding what you're going to give and what you're not going to give to those different areas is super important. I was always a yes person. Anytime somebody asked me something, it was yes, 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 yes. And now I've come around and I've said, you know what? In order to be able to accomplish the most important things, you have to be able to say no to the things that don't matter as much, or you have to be able to outsource those things that don't matter as much to people who can do them to free up the opportunity for you to focus on those things that matter.
That's a big one too, is knowing what to delegate.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And then the along with that is now that you've put those important things that you want to do, you cannot make any excuses for yourself not to do them. And maybe this is like a disciplined strategy, but like you got to hold yourself accountable to, if you say you're going to do something today, just go do it. Nobody may ever know if you did it or not except you. And if you can get to the point where you can hold yourself accountable to say, I'm going to do this today, and then you do it, it's amazing how much more work you can get done. The amount of time that we waste.
Well, you learn to be a manifester, right?
You do.
You learn to be like, if you get into a habit of like, if something comes out of your mouth, it gets done. Like, what an amazing way to be able to design a life, that to have that level of discipline and commitment and integrity.
When we were putting together our vision, kind of our mission and our vision for fight against domestic violence, one of the values that ended up getting listed, we only have 5 of them, but one of them is GSD, get stuff, or, the other word, get stuff done. Get stuff done. That's got to be a critical element to any entrepreneur's business. If you can't get stuff done, if you can't deliver, it's going to be too little, too late.
Yep, definitely. 2 more questions for you. If you could get a message across to the world by basically placing an ad on the internet that everyone online would see tomorrow, what would that ad do or look like or say?
Oh my gosh, that's a tough one. Okay, so it can be any message. I guess that message, and I'm going to put the foundation on a back burner because I think this message may be even more important, but I think that message would be, do something meaningful with your life. Choose what you want to do. Don't let life act upon you. And I know that probably sounds super hokey, like Tony Robbins-ish or something, but like, honestly, it's so easy to let life just take over what we do every day rather than choosing what we want to, the legacy we want to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And, unfortunately, a lot of people, we handcuff ourselves because of choices we've made, whether it's debt or not being willing to, change our lifestyles for a few years to get the education we want or need, or whatever it might be, or fear. We let these things stand in our way to living an impactful and meaningful and, leaving a good legacy for the world.
Yeah.
Do something to help people. Yeah.
So last one, if you could go back to any time in your life and meet yourself back then and give yourself a piece of advice, when would you go back to and what would you tell yourself?
It may be back to the beginning of Jamberry. And I may tell myself some things don't matter. Some things can wait. So maybe this is the opposite of like squeezing more out of life at every moment. Because my perspective on investing in your life and creating that balance has definitely changed during my stewardship at Jamberry. And early on, my philosophy was invest now, reap later. And so I put off health, I put off family, I put off education, I put off all these things and just lived, slept, breathed, drank, whatever that might be. It was Jamberry 24/7, and it took a toll on my health. It took a toll on my family life. It took a toll on my friendships and relationships, my hobbies, my church. I was still present in those areas, but not contributing the way I probably wanted to or should have, if that makes sense,
Yeah,
And
totally.
I probably would have told myself like, hey, wise up. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. You don't have to get every single thing. I mean, that's part of the thing as being a leader, right? Is deciding and being more conscious about what's going to fall through the cracks, because things are going to fall through the cracks. And it's just the way it is, right?
Yeah, well, yep. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Jared. I mean, I really appreciate your authenticity and what an amazing message you have going out there, and what an amazing cause you've really built and attached to an also amazing business. So thank you very much. It's been really inspiring, and I think a lot of people are going to get a lot of value out of this conversation. So it's been wonderful to have you, and maybe we'll have you back sometime and you can give us an update on how it all goes with the foundation now.
Oh, would love to. And it was fun just talking about all these things. I love talking about real issues and the industry. So thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.